It looks like any ordinary dime, but this tiny 10-cent coin could secretly be worth over $5,000. People are cashing in big time, and you might be next. Check your change before it's too late. Top 1. In the final stretch of the Great Depression, America was fighting hard to rise from the shadows of economic despair. It was the year 1937. President Franklin D. Roosevelt was in office. The country was undergoing vast changes under the New Deal, and Americans were yearning for signs of progress and prosperity. Among the small symbols of resilience and history minted that year was the 1937 United States one-dime coin, also known as the Mercury dime, which carried much more than its face value. It became a silent witness to an evolving nation and, eventually, a sought-after treasure in the world of numismatics. The coin was crafted under the artistic vision of Adolph A. Weinman, a renowned sculptor whose design was chosen to replace the barber dime. Weinman's masterpiece was not just a coin but a miniature sculpture of American ideals. The obverse of the dime features Liberty wearing a winged cap, symbolizing freedom of thought, a portrayal often mistaken for the Roman god Mercury, hence the coin's popular nickname. The reverse displays a fasces, symbolizing unity and strength, accompanied by an olive branch signifying peace. This was more than money, it was American ideology stamped in silver. The 1937 Mercury dime was struck in 3 different mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The Philadelphia Mint produced the majority of the dimes that year with no mint mark, while the Denver and San Francisco mints produced fewer quantities, marked with a D or S, respectively. Each variation holds its own place in collectors' hearts, but condition and rarity elevate specific specimens to legendary status. Collectors often obsess over fine details, full bands on the fasces, clean strikes, minimal wear. Dimes with full split horizontal bands across the fasces on the reverse, a feature requiring an extremely well-struck die, are especially prized. These high-grade examples fetch far more than their modest face value. In MS-67 condition with full bands, the 1937 D Mercury dime once sold at heritage auctions for over $4,000. Another stunning San Francisco Mint version graded MS-68 full bands drew gasps when it realized a staggering $6,462 at Stacksbauer's auction. But beyond auctions and mint marks lies the story of a coin that passed through countless hands, bought bread for families, jingled in soldiers' pockets, and lived through World War II. The Mercury dime represents an era of profound change, capturing American resilience in silver alloy. As we hold the 1937 Mercury dime today, it connects us not just to the value of money, but to the spirit of a nation overcoming adversity. Numismatists revere the Mercury dime series for its beauty, historical context, and collectability. The 1937 issue is especially appealing because it sits in the sweet spot of availability and desirability. While not exceedingly rare, high-grade examples with full bands are increasingly scarce, and demand consistently pushes their prices upward. Serious collectors hunt for top-tier specimens, willing to invest significant sums for the best of the best. In truth, the story of the 1937 one-dime United States coin is one of humble beginnings and meteoric rise. From grocery store counters to elite auction rooms, this small piece of silver has journeyed across time and space, echoing the hopes and hardships of the American people. Today, it stands not just as a collectible, but as a relic of perseverance, beauty, and national pride. Whether resting in an album or starring in a headline-making auction, the 1937 Mercury dime will always shimmer with more than just silver, it gleams with history. Top 2. In the heart of America, as the world was engulfed in the chaos of the Second World War, a small but mighty coin quietly slipped into circulation, a coin that would later become a treasured piece of history in the eyes of collectors and patriots alike. The year was 1942, and while the world reeled from bombings, battles, and breaking news, the United States Mint was quietly pressing the face of liberty into silver. This wasn't just any coin. It was the 1942 Mercury dime, a gleaming 10-cent piece that echoed with tales of resilience, artistry, and value. Imagine for a moment that you are a young man or woman in 1942. Maybe you're working at a factory helping to build bombers for the war effort. Or maybe you've just enlisted in the army, clutching tightly to a few silver dimes in your pocket as you prepare to ship out. Each dime, no bigger than a thumbnail, held not just monetary value but patriotic weight. These coins weren't made of cheap metal or casual design. They were crafted with purpose and pride. The Mercury dime, as it's affectionately called, even though it actually bears the likeness of liberty wearing a winged cap, symbolizes freedom of thought. The designer, Adolf A. Weinman, created the image in 1916, choosing to depict liberty in a classical fashion, almost reminiscent of ancient Roman gods. The winged cap gives it the nickname Mercury, after the Roman messenger god, though it truly represents liberty in motion, freedom on the go, a concept deeply needed during a time of war. This tiny silver canvas, just 17.9 millimeters in diameter, features Liberty facing left, with the word Liberty arcing over her head, "In God We Trust" to the left, and the date, 1942, etched below. On the reverse side, a bundle of fasces, symbolizing unity and strength, stands tall, wrapped with an olive branch to represent peace. United States of America, and one dime curve around the top and bottom, with E pluribus unum tucked along the side. Every detail, every element, tells a story of what America stood for, especially in 1942. What makes the 1942 dime even more interesting is its composition. These dimes were struck in 90% silver and 10% copper, giving them a brilliant luster and durability that modern clad coins simply don't have. At the time, silver was still a standard in U.S. coinage, making even the smallest denominations precious. Think about that for a second. Back then, your pocket change could actually be melted down for its intrinsic value, something that feels almost surreal today. Minted at 3 locations: Philadelphia, no mint mark; Denver, marked with a D; and San Francisco, marked with an S. The 1942 Mercury dime was produced in massive quantities due to the ongoing war economy. Over 205 million dimes were struck that year, but not all dimes are created equal. While the Philadelphia Mint produced the largest number, the San Francisco and Denver varieties have their own unique appeal, especially when preserved in pristine condition. But there's another twist in the tale of the 1942 dime that's kept collectors on edge for decades, a mysterious and highly valuable error, the 1942-1 overdate. In this rare variety, the numeral 1 from 1941 can still be seen beneath the 2 in 1942. This happened due to a die error, where a 1941 die was repunched with 1942, leaving behind a visible remnant. These overdates are extremely rare and can command astonishing prices in auctions, especially in higher grades. For example, in a 2018 Heritage Auctions event, a 1942/1 Mercury dime in mint state condition, MS66FB, meaning full bands on the fasces, sold for a staggering $120,000. This wasn't just any dime, it was a piece of minting history, preserved in stunning clarity and brilliance, with clear overdate features. The bidding war was intense, and collectors from around the world tuned in online and in person to witness this iconic sale. The room was electric with anticipation as the hammer finally came down. $120,000. For a dime. That's the power of rarity, history, and perfection. Even common examples of the 1942 Mercury dime in high grades can be worth far more than 10 cents. An uncirculated 1942 dime from Philadelphia in MS65 condition might fetch between $25 and $50, while San Francisco and Denver versions can sometimes reach $60 or more. And if you're lucky enough to have a full bands specimen, where the horizontal bands on the reverse are clearly and fully struck, values can soar even higher. Collectors prize these details because they indicate a superior strike, usually from a fresh die with careful minting conditions. There's something timeless about the Mercury dime, especially the 1942 issue. It represents the final years of its design, as by 1946 it would be replaced by the Roosevelt dime in honor of President Franklin D. Roosevelt after his passing. The Mercury dime's elegant, classical look was never quite replicated again in American coinage. It marked the end of an era of artistry and the beginning of a more modern, political representation on our change. Collectors today seek out 1942 dimes not just for their silver content or beauty, but for the stories they tell. Many have traveled through generations, passed down in cigar boxes, coin folders, or jewelry. Some were once changed for a newspaper or a soda. Others may have made it across the seas in a soldier's kit or been buried in a time capsule in someone's backyard. They are pieces of living history, tiny silver storytellers whispering tales from the 1940s to the palm of your hand. Top 3. In the final, thunderous year of World War II, 1945, the United States was a nation forged in fire, galvanized by sacrifice, and on the verge of immense change. Amid the roar of victory in Europe and the Pacific, and as returning soldiers stepped back onto American soil, the U.S. Mint quietly produced something that would outlast even the most enduring headlines, a modest coin, no bigger than a thumbnail. The 1945 one dime, bearing the proud portrait of liberty and minted in 3 historic cities. But behind its tiny silver frame lay a story much bigger than its size. The 1945 Mercury dime, as it's affectionately called by collectors, was the final issue in a series that spanned from 1916 to 1945. Designed by Adolph A. Weinman, its obverse did not depict the Roman god Mercury, as many mistakenly believed, but rather liberty herself, donning a winged cap that symbolized freedom of thought. It's an iconic image, one that whispered of freedom, soared with elegance, and mirrored the hopes of a world dreaming of peace. That year, the U.S. Mint struck these dimes in 3 locations: Philadelphia, no mint mark, Denver, D, and San Francisco, S. Each mint played its part in producing millions of these silver coins, but some would be destined to become rarities, sought after by collectors across decades, trading hands at glittering auction halls for jaw-dropping prices. The dimes were minted from 90% silver and 10% copper, weighing just 2.5 grams. Their tiny value belied their lasting impact, not just as a medium of exchange, but as a canvas of American artistry. The reverse of the coin bore a fasces, a bundle of rods with an axe, symbolizing unity and strength, wrapped with an olive branch, a message of peace through strength, deeply resonant in the year that saw both the atom bomb and the birth of the United Nations. But among collectors, not all 1945 dimes are created equal. Some 1945 dimes, especially those with full split bands across the fasces on the reverse, a sign of a sharply struck specimen, can fetch enormous sums. A 1945 diamond mint state with full bands sold for an astounding $25,300 at a heritage auction in Long Beach, California, captivating bidders with its flawless surface and strike. That's not just a coin, that's a masterpiece. Even more alluring is the Denver issue. Though millions were minted, high-grade specimens with full bands are exceptionally rare. In 2020, a 1945 D Mercury dime graded MS-68 FB crossed the auction block at Stack's Bowers in Las Vegas and shattered expectations with a final price of $13,800. It wasn't just the grade. It was the shine, the history, and the hunger of collectors who knew this wasn't just a dime, it was a legacy. And then, there's the 1945 Philadelphia issue, common in low grades, but rare with full bands and stunning luster. Even these have fetched well over $10,000 in pristine condition. These aren't just coins, they're echoes of a year when the world changed. Every scratch, every shimmer, every whisper of silver on these dimes tells a story. They speak of ration books and victory gardens, of V-Day celebrations, of telegrams from the front. They remind us that in our pockets once jingled the memory of a generation. But what makes the 1945 dime even more attractive isn't just its history or metal content. It's the desire it inspires in collectors. It's the gleam in the eyes of a bidder who knows they're holding something special. And when one of these coins hits the market, The price doesn't just reflect its silver, it reflects its soul.